This is Democracy Now! The title of this video, Mumia should be freed. A sitting trial judge. And a judge does make reference that he should be freed. So let's listen. The sound must be turned up. Let's do it again. Now let's listen.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. After 41 years in prison, most of it on death row, this Friday, the journalist and former Black Panther Mumia Abu-Jamal faces what could be his last chance for a new trial to consider newly discovered evidence that casts doubt on his 1982 conviction for the murder of police officer Daniel Faulkner. Mumia Abu-Jamal's lawyers say evidence in boxes discovered in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office by the new DA at the time, Larry Krasner, in 2019, show his trial was tainted by judicial bias and police and prosecutorial misconduct, like withholding of evidence and bribing or coercing witnesses to lie. Evidence in the boxes included notes from one of two key witnesses to prosecutors requesting, quote, the money owed to me. Well, on Tuesday, a United Nations working group submitted an amicus brief urging the judge to grant Mumia Abu-Jamal a new trial to consider the evidence, and also cited evidence of racial bias in the case. Quoting the statement by Mumia Abu-Jamal's original trial judge, Albert Sabo, overheard by a court stenographer, when he said, quote, I'm going to help them, the jury, fry that N-word, but he used the word. Last month, Philadelphia Common Pleas Court Judge Lucretia Clemens indicated she intends to dismiss Abu-Jamal's request for a new trial, but said she would announce her final decision this Friday, December 16th. Judge Clemens is a member of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia's Commission on Racial Healing. She spoke last year in a video by Catholic Philly about how Catholic...
So I'm going to pause here because this is when they go into another part. And then we're going to skip to this interview with the judge here. So let's play this part now.
Headlined, Finding Justice for Both Maureen Faulkner and Mumia Abu-Jamal, referring to the widow of the slain Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. Can you talk about that and why you are calling for the release of Mumia Abu-Jamal in this critical week where it could be the last chance he has for a new trial?
Thank you, Amy. It's good to talk with you again. Mumia Abu-Jamal is a Black American political activist and journalist.
So this is Judge Wendell Griffen, and Griffen with an E. That's Griffen. Arkansas Circuit Judge. So he's a sitting judge.
As you know, who has been incarcerated since he was convicted in 1982 and sentenced to death for the 1981 murder of Daniel Faulkner, a Philadelphia, Pennsylvania police officer. His 1982 death sentence was overturned by a federal judge in 2001 due to sentencing irregularities. At that time, the question was, why wasn't the whole conviction overturned? But in 2019, the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office disclosed for the first time that there were 6 boxes of materials that had been concealed and not delivered to the defense team before Mumia was tried. Under a 1963 decision that every law student knows about and every lawyer knows about who does criminal law practice, Brady versus Maryland, the Supreme Court of the United States held that due process of law is violated when the prosecution conceals evidence relevant to guilt or punishment from the defense. In this country, though, that kind of precedent should have required Mumia to be released and the state, or the Commonwealth in this case, decide whether or not to prosecute him based upon having revealed the right evidence. That hasn't been done. And so the question is, why?
I mean, This is such a very obvious case for a new trial. Like, it's so glaringly obvious, which is why I think makes Mumia one of the more recognizable political prisoners in the United States. It's such an egregious case. It's so out of bounds. I mean, you have a sitting judge who's saying this out of Arkansas.
Why is Mumia Abu Jamal not being given, as another federal judge has said, the benefit of the precedents in 1963, this is 60 years, that he should be getting, because the state or the Commonwealth attorneys violated his due process laws. He had a pretense of a trial. And that's what the Supreme Court of the United States said earlier than that in 1935, in an earlier case. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why is this journalist, why is this Black activist not free? And why is it so hard for a judge to say, hey, we've got the law that requires him to be free. I'm going to follow the law and declare him free. And if the Commonwealth wants to retry him, they can do so. If the Commonwealth decides we can't retry him because the evidence is no longer there, people have passed away, witnesses have forgotten information, then that is not Mumia's fault. That is the fault.
And that's essentially why they're keeping him there. It's like, we know this is wrong. We know you should get a new trial, but because we know you're not going to be reconvicted, we're just going to skip over the law and what should happen. Just despicable. Let's, for the sake of time, let's move to this next part in the story, and that is this article from Truth Out. Truthout.org, and I always like to shout out the writer if I can find. Oh, right here, Marjorie Cohen. Looks like on the 13th, so just not too long ago. And this one's entitled, "After 41 years in prison, Mumia Abu Jamal may finally get a chance for a new trial." I mean, it's so blatantly obvious. If they held this evidence, 2 boxes of evidence, discovery, like what is hard to understand here, besides the fact that he's a Black Panther? Evidence suggests the prosecutor in Mumia's trial bribed star witnesses to testify and wrongly exclude Black juries. Let's blow this up. See this better. Here we go. Part of a series. Award-winning journalist and author Mumia Abu Jamal has been in prison for 41 years in a case infused with racism. The 68-year-old is a former Black Panther and the author of a dozen books, including the celebrated Live from Death Row. After his 1982 conviction in the killing of police officer Daniel Faulkner, Abu Jamal was sentenced to death. In 2011, his sentence was reduced to life without the possibility of parole. Without the possibility of parole. Abu Jamal has a serious heart condition and other life-threatening health problems. Faulkner stopped Abu Jamal's younger brother, William Cook, on the morning of December 9th. It's funny. This is the day after my birthday, is December 8th. 1981, Abu Jamal was driving a taxi, coincidentally drove by and came to his brother's assistance. Following a shootout, Faulkner was shot and killed. Abu Jamal was shot in the stomach. On December 16th, that's today, so this is what happened in 2018, in 1981, this day in 1981. On December 16th, Judge Lucretia Clemens in the Philadelphia Court of Commons will decide. Oh, I'm sorry, that's today. That's not a future or past date. My apologies. Referring to receive a new trial. His attorneys Judith Ritter, Samuel Spitzel, and Brett Grout argued that if the jury had heard newly discovered evidence that was withheld from him and not presented at his murder, Abu Jamal would have not have been convicted. On October 26th, Clemens indicated her intent to deny Abu Jamal's petition for a new trial, but still would make a final decision. So the decision after hearing from the parties in the case. So you hear that? She indicated her intent to deny this already. Prosecution failed to give defendant exonerating evidence in violation of Bradley versus Maryland. So they're talking about the same case that he cited in the video, and it goes further on to talk about Abu Jamal's case and what he's up against. Now, as the article state, she's already indicated she's already where she's leaning. So, I mean, it is what it is, but the people who are freedom fighters, the people who are for free Mumia, you know, you never want to extinguish any last hope you may have for freeing your comrade, your loved one. So they're still holding out hope for a new trial.